Hello and welcome back to Pathfinder. My name is Philip, and I'm here to talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This is part of a series I am producing covering the various deities in the Pathfinder role-playing game and its setting, the world of Golarion. Last time, I covered Norgorber, ascendant god of thievery, poison, murder, and secrets. This time, I am concluding my coverage of the Core 20 with Cayden Cailean, the god of alcohol, freedom, and bravery. Cayden Cailean was the second of the three gods to ascend via the Starstone after Eredin. He rose to divinity in 2765 AR, about 2,000 years before the current year in the setting, making him the next youngest of the core deities after Iomedae. He is known by many nicknames due to his popularity, though he is most commonly referred to as the Accidental God, the Lucky Drunk, or the Drunken Hero. His areas of concern are freedom, wine, beer, and courage. He typically takes a carefree and mischievous approach to the world around him, except in his opposition to tyranny, which he handles with zeal. Outside of his formal clergy, he is typically worshipped by bartenders, brewers, freedom fighters, and innkeepers, and, of course, good adventurers. Cayden Cailean is typically depicted more or less how he appeared in life, as a handsome Taldan man with bronze skin, brown hair, and a ready smile. He is often depicted in common leather armor or chainmail, and always with a mug of ale in his hand. He is sometimes shown wielding his rapier in defense of the innocent, generally by fending off hordes of fiends. Followers who place a greater emphasis on his commitment to freedom might show him with shackles hanging from his wrists, their chains broken. The Lucky Drunk makes his home in Elysium, in his divine realm. This realm contains a city filled with inns, taverns, and alehouses, where the faithful are called to drink and make merry. The mood here is universally friendly, and visitors to the realm are generally welcomed and called to join in the revelry. Surrounding the city are the fields of battle, where followers are called to test themselves by challenging one another to friendly competitions. These are generally combat-focused, though other tests of wit and skill occur as well. The Azadas who reside in this realm often officiate and arrange the bouts, offering substantial rewards to mortals who visit the realm and emerge from a competition victorious. Devout followers of Cayden Cailean, called Caydenites, are readily friendly, seek simple pleasures, and are courageous in the face of oppression. They are tasked with freeing those who live under tyranny, then celebrating freedom with a good drink. They frequently serve as mediators in disputes, and try to bring feuding parties to the negotiating table, where they can hash out their differences over a cup of wine or a mug of beer. Followers are almost universally free-spirited, and often buck against authority, though they can often be counted upon to do the right thing in the end. For this reason, the Church has no formal hierarchy, though elder priests and those who have become local heroes are treated with particular respect and importance. The faith of Cayden Cailean is simple and pragmatic, and this is reflected in his houses of worship. Temples to Cayden Cailean are typically modeled after alehouses or taverns. They serve food and drink to their patrons and are usually filled with song, dance, and goodwill. In areas of oppression or tyranny, such as Cheliax, the church is far more secretive, often hiding its nature as a religious establishment and posing as a simple tavern. Shrines to the Accidental God are common in the Inner Sea region, as most alehouses will have a small corner with a shrine in his name. Some establishments will go so far as to have special rooms set aside for priests, though they will still be expected to pay or help serve drinks. The church actively sponsors and protects orphanages around Golarion, and many orphans grow up to take the surname Cailean as a result. While Cayden Cailean is a god of drink, he views alcohol abuse as a corruption of something he loves. As such, the church often takes steps to help those dealing with alcoholism, from simple encouragement to magical assistance. Caydenites who have recovered from such an affliction can still be active church members or even clergy, though they often focus more on the opposition to tyranny. Cayden Cailean was never much of a writer in his mortal life, and never bothered with a holy text. Instead, he produced the Placard of Wisdom, a simple wooden sign scrawled with a few lines of text which hangs in all of his temples. The placard typically reads, "Do good, enjoy life, have a drink now and then, and stand up for what you believe in." Individual priests might make slight alterations or additions based on their own philosophies, and the god himself seems to take no issue with this. Beyond these simple sentiments, Cayden Cailean prefers to let his actions speak for themselves, trusting his followers to live by his example. The Church of Cayden Cailean was initially spread in taverns across the land, often by bards singing of his great deeds. Numerous drinking songs sing of his deeds and praise his greatness, and his simple, approachable doctrine quickly made him popular among the common folk. Church members can be found around the world, but his worship has taken root most strongly in Absalom, Taldor, Andoran, the River Kingdoms, and the Shackles. Among humans, those of Taldan, Ulfin, or Varisian descent are most common among his followers, while he also has some popularity among dwarves, gnomes, halflings, Ayuvarin, and Dromar. Prior to his ascension, Cayden Cailean was a Taldan mercenary and freedom fighter of no small renown. His origins are vague, though many suspect that he spent some time in an orphanage in his youth, due to his church's patronage of such institutions. As an adult, he made his living in Absalom as a mercenary, though he quickly developed a mixed reputation. He frequently abandoned his assignments if he was employed by tyrannical employers or those who sought to exploit others, making most bosses see him as unreliable at best. Conversely, the strength of his convictions and his unwavering willingness to stand up for those in need earned him a legendary reputation among the oppressed. He was well known for his affable nature and contented himself to enjoy the simple pleasures in life: a good drink, loyal friends, a hearty song, and no small amount of pleasurable company. The night of his ascension has gone down in legend. Cayden Cailean was drinking in Absalom, as he was on most nights. He joined in a contest of dares, with participants issuing increasingly absurd or dangerous challenges to one another. This all culminated in Cayden Cailean accepting a dare to attempt the test of the Starstone. With one last drink of liquid courage, he drunkenly staggered his way across the bridge and entered the Starstone Cathedral. 3 days later, the accidental god emerged, much to everyone's surprise, including his own. He was completely unable to remember how he had gotten through the cathedral or passed the test. Unconcerned, he responded by laughing, then probably went out for a celebratory drink before joining the other gods in the outer sphere. The specifics of Cayden Cailean's test are, of course, unknowable, but that hasn't stopped his followers from depicting them in drinking songs. These innumerable works of music are collectively called the 1,000 Songs of the Starstone, and each one tells the tale of the Lucky Drunk's Starstone test. No two songs tell the story in the same way, and most incorporate local jokes and customs from wherever the singer happens to be at the time. Traveling bards make a habit of collecting versions of these songs from around the world, then reciting them for amused audiences who delight in the strange customs described in verses written in faraway lands. Shifting gears slightly, Cayden Cailean is the only major god who has a surname, and this is one issue on which he is uncharacteristically strict. Most followers suspect that this is an act of remembrance for his long-lost parents, or for some adoptive parental figure. Regardless, he maintained his insistence that his full name be used after his ascension, and eventually it stuck. Prior to his ascension, Cayden Cailean was the proud owner of a tremendously loyal hound named Thunder. The story of their meeting goes that one night the mercenary Cayden Cailean was stumbling home drunk from a bar when he came across the body of a dead female hound. As he approached, the hound's pups emerged from the shadows and growled fiercely, putting themselves between their mother and this strange man. Touched by their bravery, Cayden Cailean fed the pups, then respectfully buried their mother and brought them home. He gave them away to friends and family, except for the largest, which he kept for himself and named Thunder in honor of its fearsome growl. Not long after the Lucky Drunk's ascension, Thunder disappeared from the inner sphere, having been raised to a form of lesser divinity by his master and joining him in Elysium. Not long after this, fierce red hounds, called K-hounds, began to appear on the Isle of Kortos, and many followers seek to earn the loyalty of one of these hounds as a display of their faith. A few centuries after his ascension, Cayden Cailean found himself embroiled in a conflict with a servant of Asmodeus. The infernal duke Salicatal, who had dominion over wine, felt threatened by the Lucky Drunk's rapid ascension and popularity. Convinced of his own power, he challenged the god to single combat to the death. Cayden Cailean, characteristically, responded by suggesting a game of dueling dares, mediated by Pharasma herself. Salicatal accepted, and soon met Cayden Cailean on neutral ground. The contest began, and the Lucky Drunk soon began to needle his opponent with insults and barbs, in the spirit of the competition. After many rounds of dares and insults, Salicatal finally lost his temper and charged. Cayden Cailean, who'd spent the entire competition taking swigs from his mug of beer, promptly tore his opponent's wings from his body and used them to beat him to death. Really a stop hitting yourself moment. Cayden Cailean might be a jovial fellow, but let it never be said that he isn't ready and willing to throw down. The drunken hero's inherent likability and carefree nature means he is on good or at least neutral terms with most good-aligned deities. He gets along well with the prismatic ray, Desna, Sarenrae, and Shelyn, and each of the goddesses holds him in high regard. Torag, despite his gruff exterior, has a fondness for Cayden Cailean. The two share a love of beer, particularly after a hard day's work. Some dwarven legends even feature the Lucky Drunk as a humorous sidekick to the Forge Father, as the two partake in adventures throughout the Great Beyond. Cayden Cailean has a particularly strong friendship with Milani, the goddess of freedom and revolution. His own herald, Thace, wields a weapon provided by Milani, and their churches often work in tandem in areas of oppression or tyranny. Cayden's carefree and simple nature often puts him at odds with his more serious peers, even those with whom he might nominally be aligned. Iomedae sees him as reckless and irresponsible, and encourages him to take greater action against the forces of evil. Similarly, Abadar and Erastil take issue with his chaotic aspects, believing that his emphasis on drunkenness threatens the stability of the communities they hold dear. The Lucky Drunk also gets along poorly with Irori, who considers him something of a cheat for having ascended to divinity by merely following in Eredin's footsteps with the Starstone. Cayden Cailean actively dislikes all evil deities, though he hates Asmodeus above all others. The two deities are diametrically opposed in all things, and the accidental god rarely passes up the opportunity to stir up trouble for the forces of hell. This rivalry is made manifest in Cheliax, where the Caydenite Church is one of the centers of anti-Thrune sentiment. Before he ascended to divinity, Cayden Cailean, bisexual king, was an incorrigible flirt, and had numerous romances with men and women from across the Inner Sea. And he wasn't about to stop just because he became a god. He takes immense joy in serenading Shelyn and pursuing her affection with polite zeal, though she always turns him down with the same politeness. He is also said to have had a relationship with Desna, with the Taldan god Kyrgyz rumored to be their offspring. Cayden Cailean is also romantically involved with Trud, the dwarven god of bravery, and Trud's sister Bolka is excitedly pushing her brother toward a proposal of marriage. Famously, Cayden Cailean has also had numerous flings with Calistria, though their relationship could be described as affectionately tumultuous at best. She has gotten the better of him on multiple occasions, and he has taken to treating her with caution as a result. Some rumors suggest that the motivation for his taking the test of the Starstone was secretly to impress Calistria after she rejected him as a mortal man. He refutes these rumors, however, and those who spread them are likely to find their next cup of wine to have gone sour in the glass. While it isn't canon, I suspect that he has taken interest in several other attractive deities, such as Arshay and Limneris, and will likely be showing interest in Nocticula in the future. For players who might be interested in characters who follow Cayden Cailean, here are a few useful details. For those using the alignment rules, Cayden Cailean is chaotic good, and will accept clerics of that alignment as well as neutral good and chaotic neutral alignments. His edicts are to drink, to free slaves, to aid the oppressed, and to seek glory and adventure. Conversely, to waste alcohol, to be a mean drunk, or to own a slave are all anathema to Cayden Cailean. His holy symbol is a tankard, often shown with a frothy head of foam bubbling over the top. His domains are cities, freedom, indulgence, and might. Cayden Cailean's sacred colors are silver and tan, inspired by his signature chainmail and leather armor. Followers will often wear utilitarian garb, workers' clothing, adventuring gear, armor, etc. The Church of Cayden Cailean particularly appeals to working people, so many followers dress in plain, unadorned clothing. Successful adventurers among the faithful might decorate themselves with silver tankards, or with souvenirs from their adventures. Most followers will carry a tankard or mug on their person at all times, often hanging from their waist. In places of oppression, followers might need to hide their faith, and thus might dress in nondescript clothing and hide any holy symbols they have. The accidental god's favored weapon is the rapier, and many of his faithful follow in his footsteps by wielding that weapon. The Church doesn't teach any particular fighting techniques or require any martial training on the part of the faithful, so most followers simply wield whatever weapons they are comfortable with. One-handed weapons are particularly common, due to the tendency of followers to fight with a drink in one hand. On that topic, many followers of Cayden Cailean are known to possess fighting tankards, cups forged from steel which can be wielded in combat much like a hammer or cudgel. The drunken hero's favorite animal is the hound, and, as mentioned earlier, he is known to have had a pet hound named Thunder in his mortal life. He also favors eagles, and any animal which has escaped from captivity. Cayden Cailean's church appeals very strongly to non-spellcasting classes, so his formal clergy contains a high number of fighters, barbarians, champions, rogues, and swashbucklers, in addition to the more conventional clerics. Even the occasional chalice-bearing thaumaturge can be found. Bards are common among church leaders as well, and take pride in their role spreading the faith in its early years. Alchemists who devote themselves to creating new alcoholic beverages will also be welcomed by the faith. Followers will likely take feats from archetypes which improve their swordsmanship, such as the duelist, or will join organizations like the Firebrands or the Eagle Knights, which focus on freedom and opposition to tyranny. Followers who are accustomed to bar fights might also take feats from the weapon improviser archetype. Cayden Cailean's church appeals to members of many ancestries, though humans are the most common. Humans from Taldan, Andorani, and Ulfin backgrounds are common among his faith, as are many of the pirates of the Shackles. Many dwarves appreciate his love of alcohol, though only some revere him as their chosen deity. Halflings deeply appreciate his devotion to freedom, as Caydenites are often the first to stand up in defense of the oppressed. Gnomes are attracted to his emphasis on adventure, and Ayuvarans and Dromar are drawn to the faith's simple and good-natured teachings. The Church's broad appeal means that other ancestries and heritages could easily be found among the faithful, though they might face some suspicion until they buy a round of drinks or stand up to a bully. Due to the Church's support of orphanages around Golarion, many parentless children take up the faith and take the surname Cailean as a sign of devotion. Devout followers of Cayden Cailean are called to live lives of bravery, adventure, and celebration. They are tasked with standing up to tyranny and freeing the oppressed. They take joy in the simple pleasures of life, from singing songs in a tavern with friends to engaging in friendly competitions with their fellows. Followers often engage in dueling dares, competitions emulating the one which resulted in their own god's ascension. The faith of Cayden Cailean is loosely structured, meaning most followers are highly independent. Followers believe in the power of a good drink, and often try to resolve conflicts with a discussion over a mug of beer. In places of oppression, the Caydenite Church is a supporter of rebel movements, and houses of worship often serve as centers of insurgent activity. For those players looking for more character inspiration, or to homebrew some custom magic items for a follower of Cayden Cailean, check out his 1st edition page on Archives of Nethys. His divine fighting technique might serve as an inspiration for character behavior during a fight, and he has several cool magic items and spells which might be fun to bring over to 2nd edition. The Cailean Fighting Tankard, the Watchful Tankard, and the Drunkard's Breath spell are all incredibly flavorful. For GMs looking to integrate Cayden Cailean and his followers into a campaign, here are some ideas. His current herald is Thace, an angelic being who wields a crystalline halberd provided by Milani herself. Called the Accidental Herald, Thace was one of Cayden Cailean's friends from his mortal life, who shared his flirtatious nature and his devotion to liberation. She once challenged Asmodeus himself to a fight, and only escaped with her life after he tore one of her wings from her body. The Prince of Lies keeps this wing in his throne room as a trophy to this day. Rumors abound of Thace's romances with mortals, celestials, and even gods, though the truth of any of them is difficult to determine. The Lucky Drunk's divine servitors are the Ataxians, small pixie-like humanoids surrounded by an aura of small bubbles. Outside of these servants, he might reach out to his favored followers by making fresh drinks appear unexpectedly. Conversely, those he disfavors might find their drinks suddenly going sour. From a set-dressing standpoint, the Church of Cayden Cailean is likely the faith to which player characters will have the most exposure, at least in most parts of Avestan. This is due in equal parts to his wide appeal among the common folk, his popularity as the subject of songs and tales, and the presence of his shrines in taverns around Golarion. This wouldn't hold true in places with state religions like Cheliax or Nidal, but would generally apply to other regions with a strong human or halfling presence. For a low or mid-level adventure, a group of PCs might be contacted by a priest of Cayden Cailean to deal with a local bandit lord. This bandit lord could have been raised as an orphan and took the surname Cailean, but has since turned his back on the faith. He is now literally committing acts of evil in Cayden Cailean's name, and the church wishes to put a stop to this blasphemy. Accomplishing this task would firmly establish the PCs as local heroes, setting them up for future adventures. On a more whimsical note, a world travel-themed campaign might find player characters wandering from region to region to gather ingredients for a legendary brew. Perhaps a group of PCs are collected by an elder Caydenite priest who has recently discovered or developed a new recipe for a beverage, one inspired by the Lucky Drunk himself. This recipe could call for especially rare ingredients: fruit from a tree deep in the Mwangi Expanse, mushrooms from the Darklands, tree bark from the elemental plane of wood, that sort of thing. This could easily be a level 1 to 20 adventure, and presents an excellent opportunity to break out the weird monsters from the bestiary or monster core. For a high-level adventure, PCs might be tasked with recovering Thace's missing wing and restoring the Herald to her complete form. Now, I'm not saying the PCs should be storming Asmodeus' throne room. If you want to do that, go ahead, but I would like to ground it a bit more. Picture this. The PCs are a group of high-level characters sympathetic to the Church of Cayden Cailean in Cheliax. The House of Thrune has recently captured a group of Caydenite freedom fighters, and is planning an elaborate public execution to further demoralize other rebels, and to display the might of Asmodeus and Infernal Cheliax. As part of this ceremony, the church will display various trophies taken by Asmodeus and his followers, including the Wing of Thace. The PCs might be approached by an elder priest, a high-ranking Azada or Ataxian, or even by Thace herself to get the adventure going. Such an adventure would involve fights against the powerful forces of hell, including devils, diabolic priests, and hell knights. For any of these adventure ideas, don't be afraid to include a nondescript brown-haired man celebrating in a tavern with the PCs upon their eventual victory. Just make sure to mention that the celebratory drinks seem especially refreshing. So that's it. That's Cayden Cailean, the god of bravery, drink, and freedom. He is a force for good in the world, though he is always sure to mix in a little chaos and fun wherever he can. And in honor of Cayden Cailean, I'm going to be making myself a drink. This marks the end of my coverage of the core 20 deities in the Pathfinder campaign setting. I started this project with the hope of providing some useful information for players and GMs of my favorite RPG. I hope I've done that. And yet, I have only just cracked the surface of Golarion's divine lore, and hundreds of deities exist within the setting. I'd like to come back and continue this series with more gods and goddesses in the future, but my schedule is going to slow down a bit. Or at least, that's what I was planning to do. Then Paizo announced the upcoming War of Immortals adventure path. This AP will involve a war between the gods, and the death of one of the gods in the core 20. Now, I have no idea which of the gods is getting the metaphorical axe, though I do have my suspicions. But, more recently, Paizo announced which god will be taking up the empty spot in the core 20. Erasni, the Unyielding. So, next week, I will be back with one more Core 20 video talking about Erasni. She is my favorite god outside of the Core 20 already, and her story is fascinating, tragic, and inspiring. So, fair warning, the next script is by far my longest. Up next is Erasni, the Unyielding, former Herald of Eredin, former Lich Queen of Geb, and rival of the Whispering Tyrant. See you next time. If you enjoyed this video, consider checking out my rules supplement Expanded Ancestries on Pathfinder Infinite. It adds over 200 new ancestry feats to the game, spread among each of the ancestries not covered by the Pathfinder 2e remaster. And be sure to like and subscribe to see more videos like this.